movie footage used in any of the Slasher Scotty videos, including the body count, the rankings, and the top 10 videos, are entirely owned by the copyright holders. Slasher Scotty makes no claim of ownership and simply uses the footage for purposes of education, commentary, and criticism under the Fair Use Act.
Welcome everyone to The Body Count, where we tally up all of your favorite kills for all of your favorite horror movies. I am your host, Slasher Scotty, and today's episode is on Halloween 2 from 1981, the iconic sequel of the original. Halloween 2 is one of the best, if not the best, sequel to an original film in horror history, as this sequel is a perfect follow-up to the original story that John Carpenter and Deborah Hill laid out. You get some amazing dialogue, creepy and suspenseful scenes, and some amazing kills. Speaking of amazing kills, how about we go and get to them and see which bodies Michael racked up. The film starts off with a recap from the original where Michael is laying down on the floor. Laurie tells Tommy and Lindsay to go down the street and get some help. Dr. Loomis gets wind of this and shoots Michael 6 times! 6 times right in the heart! Michael falls off the balcony and onto the lawn. Dr. Loomis looks over the balcony and sees that Michael is gone. He runs outside to see if he can catch wind of Michael's whereabouts, and a guy living next door wearing his pajamas comes out, and he and Loomis have some clever dialogue that always gives me chills.
What's going on out here?
Call the police. Tell the sheriff I shot him.
Who?
Tell him he's still on the loose.
Is this some kind of joke? I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight.
You don't know what death is.
Next we get a title card with the opening credits. Michael is lurking around the shadows behind the houses of Haddonfield, where we are now introduced to this girl named Alice Martin on the phone, and she is discussing the murders that happened down the street. Michael steals a kitchen knife from an elderly couple and sneaks into Alice's house. As any dumb person in a horror movie, she goes and checks out the suspected noise where she is added to the body count by being stabbed right in the chest with the knife. Meanwhile, at the Doyle house, police and paramedics, two of which are named Bud Scarlatti and Jimmy, they put Laurie onto a stretcher and into an ambulance. At the hospital, the nurses call the doctor, who is obviously a drunk, Dr. Mixter, and he administers a shot to Laurie with her obviously stating she doesn't want to be put to sleep. I mean, I get why they are sedating her, but she clearly doesn't want to be put to sleep. Isn't that, like, illegal to do something that the patient doesn't consent to? Across town, Sheriff Brackett and Dr. Loomis drive across town searching for Michael Myers. Loomis babbles on about how he shot Michael 6 times, to which Sheriff Brackett thinks he just missed, as no one can survive 6 shots to the chest. They hear some trick-or-treaters screaming and see someone dressed as Michael Myers approaching the children. Dr. Loomis runs out of the car where the Michael Myers look-alike runs away in fear. Sheriff Brackett restrains Dr. Loomis, whereas the Michael Myers trick-or-treater runs across the street and right into a police cruiser, ramming him right into another vehicle, which promptly explodes, incinerating this trick-or-treater, later identified as Ben Tramer, that's right, the one mentioned to go to the homecoming dance in the last movie with Laurie by Annie, thus adding him to the body count. A few more police cruisers pull up, and Deputy Gary Hunt gets out of one of them, and he tells Sheriff Brackett that one of the victims in the house was his daughter, Annie. Back at the hospital, Jimmy has taken an interest into Laurie. Mrs. Alves, the head nurse, comes into the room, and she tells Laurie that Dr. Mixter was going to wait until tomorrow to apply the cast onto her injured ankle, and tell Laurie that she needs to get some rest. She tells Jimmy to leave the room, and Bud comes in and tells them that they need to leave due to getting an incoming call. We all know this call is for them to get the bodies from the last film, those of Linda, Bob, and Annie. Speaking of Annie, Sheriff Brackett arrives at the Wallace residence, where there is a ton of news reporters and police cruisers surrounding the house. Sheriff Brackett identifies the body of his daughter, Annie, And no, I am not adding Annie to the body count, as she was just at it last week when she was killed in that movie. Confirmed corpses, I'm sorry, they don't count. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Well, technically I do, but you know what I mean. Brackett blames Loomis on letting Michael Myers out of Smith's Grove Sanitarium, and then leaves to tell his wife about their daughter's death before she hears it from anyone else. Brackett puts Deputy Gary Hunt in charge, and Loomis speaks with him to confirm whether the body that was struck by the police cruiser was in fact Michael Myers. Spoiler alert, it isn't. After learning that Laurie's location from the news reporter, Michael makes his way to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where he enters through the back door. And he resumes his search for Laurie, but in her room, Laurie listens to Jimmy telling her that it was Michael that attacked her. Mrs. Alves tells Nurse Janet to get Mr. Garrett to see if he could fix the phone lines. And he ends up handing her a walkie-talkie to keep in contact with him, even though she has no clue how to use it. Mr. Garrett goes to the supply room and is added to the body count, where he is hit in the skull with a hammer claw. Fun fact, this film kills Mr. Garrett, a security officer, with a hammer claw. Friday the 13th Part 2, another first sequel to the original, killed Deputy Winslow, also with a hammer claw. Both sequels were released in 1981. Not a good year for law enforcement with hammer claws, don't you say? At the medical examiner's office, Dr. Loomis, Deputy Gary Hunt, and the medical examiner go over the charred remains of whom they believe to be Michael Myers. The examiner estimates that the body belongs to someone who is younger, to which Michael Myers is 21 years old per Dr. Loomis. After they leave the office, a mob is angrily throwing rocks at the Myers house and shouting in anger. Two boys approach Deputy Gary Hunt and Dr. Loomis looking for their friend Ben Tramer and how he wore a ridiculous costume. Dr. Loomis went to get his medical records, confirming the second death on the body count belonging to Ben Tramer. Afterwards, Deputy Hunt gets a call about a break-in at the elementary school. Back at the hospital, Laurie has a dream of herself as a young girl, arguing with her mother. The woman breaks the shocking news to her, stating that she is not her mother, and then Laurie sees herself again at a hospital with a boy a few years older than she is, sitting quietly in a chair, staring blankly out of a window. This is obviously to set up the whole brother-sister angle later on in the film. Still at the hospital, just a different wing of the hospital, Bud and Karen are in the therapy pool where they are getting a little freaky and frisky. Michael walks into the adjacent room and turns the temperature gauge for the pool up, and Karen complains that the water is getting a little too hot. Bud goes to check the temperature, with some male ass being shown, and in a short off-screen death, we see Bud's silhouette getting strangled with a cord, adding him to the body count. Michael then enters the therapy room where Karen thinks he's Bud, and she starts kissing Michael's nasty-looking hand. Karen eventually turns around, seeing it is Michael, where he then scalds her face, her skin peeling off in the therapy pool, which is reaching boiling temperatures, thus killing her in the process and adding another one to their body count. Loomis, Hunt, and several officers are at the Haddonfield Elementary School and find a classroom that was broken into. There are traces of blood across several desks and a butcher knife that is sticking through a crayon drawing of Judith Myers on a tabletop. Loomis looks at the drawing and he says sister. The officer then draws their attention to the blackboard where Dr. Loomis mistakenly pronounced the word Samhain. The correct pronunciation is Samhain. Oh, and cheap plug, my film company Gravestone Films has created an indie horror comedy film titled Samhain, which you can get on DVD and Blu-ray, on Amazon. Why not check it out? Loomis explains how Samhain was the name which referred to the Celtic Lord of the Dead. Marion Chambers shows up and tells Loomis that he must return to Smith's Grove right away, as the governor is now involved in the Michael Myers fiasco, and their administrator, Dr. Rogers, wants it all swept under the rug. Loomis refuses to go with Marion, where she informs him that they sent a federal marshal to ensure his return to Smith's Grove is peacefully done. At the hospital, Jimmy tells Laurie he won't let anything happen to her, and realizes she is having an allergic reaction to the medication that was given to her. But Jimmy tells Nurse Janet, who ends up running off to find Dr. Mixter. She finds him alright, cause as she turns his chair over, Dr. Mixter is added to the body count, where he has a syringe sticking out of his eyeball. Nurse Janet is also added to the body count when Michael Myers comes up from right behind her and injects her with an air bubble straight into her temple. Jimmy grows impatient with Janet not returning, due to being dead and all, and he goes to find help himself. Michael eventually shows up to Laurie's room and stabs her with a scalpel, which turns out to be just pillows underneath the bedsheets. Laurie was faking her reaction this whole time, knowing that Michael was hell-bent on finding her, and she starts limping down the hallway. Jimmy finds out that Laurie is missing from her room and tells Nurse Jill, who also finds out Mr. Garrett and Mrs. Alves is also missing. Jimmy goes into the operating room and finds the head nurse, Mrs. Alves, strapped to an operating table with an IV running out of her arm, draining all of her blood onto the floor, thus adding her to the body count. Jimmy slips on the blood, but unlike Mrs. Alves, he is not added to the body count because he's not dead, just knocked out. Jill tries to leave the hospital, and it turns out that her car doesn't start. Shocker. Also, her 4 tires have been slashed. She runs back into the hospital, which was a dumb idea, and finds Laurie. She tries to have Laurie speak, and Michael comes up from behind her and sticks her in the back with a scalpel, raising her off the floor, her shoes falling off her feet, and then dropping her carcass to the floor, and adding her to the body count as well. Laurie and Michael then have a nice chase scene where Laurie comes across Mr. Garrett's lifeless dead body, and then she eventually escapes Michael, leaving the hospital and entering an unlocked car outside, hiding in the passenger side of the car. So Michael, won't find her. Dr. Loomis is then seen with Marion in the marshal's car heading back to Smith Grove Sanitarium, where he does some dialogue babbling about Samhain, which, well, have a listen for yourself and see what he says.
In order to appease the gods, the Druid priests held fire rituals. Prisoners of war, criminals, the insane, animals were burned alive in baskets. By observing the way they died, the Druids believed they could see omens of the future. 2,000 years later, we've come no further. Samhain isn't evil spirits. It isn't goblins, ghosts, or witches. It's the unconscious mind. We're all afraid of the dark inside ourselves.
This is where Marion tells Loomis that Michael is the brother of Laurie and that he is killing his younger sister 15 years after murdering his older one. Dr. Loomis fires a warning shot when finding out that Laurie was taken to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where the marshal turns the car around so they can head straight to the hospital. Back at the hospital, Jimmy eventually shows up and enters the car, but passes out onto the steering wheel, due to a concussion, of course, from his slip earlier on, and the car horn ends up going off. Laurie removes Jimmy's head from the car wheel because, Michael would find out about it, but it's too late, he got wind of it, and Laurie sees Dr. Loomis, Marion Chambers, and the marshal arrive at the hospital. She ends up going to them for help, but her screams are left unheard. Michael comes out of the shadows and starts chasing Laurie. Laurie makes it to the hospital door, and Dr. Loomis lets her in. Michael then breaks through the glass door like a badass killing machine, and is shot by Loomis, falling to the ground in the process. Marion goes to the marshal's car to use the radio to call for help, and as she does, the marshal, identified as in post-credits, known as Marshal Terrence Gummel, checks on Michael, believing that he is dead. And it turns out Michael is very much alive and adds the marshal to the body count, slitting his throat with the scalpel. Marion on the radio is heard as saying, listen to this.
Unit calling, identify.
Marion Chambers with Dr. Loomis at the clinic. He's here.
10-4, unit calling, identify suspect.
Michael Myers, just get your ass over here.
Loomis and Laurie run from Michael and hide inside of the room, to which Michael breaks down the door. Loomis goes to shoot at Michael, realizing he is out of bullets, and is stabbed with the scalpel. Loomis, however, gave Laurie a gun before he was stabbed, and she shot 2 perfect rounds into Michael's eyeballs, making him tear blood. She should have been a sniper or a hit woman, because she had 2 perfect shots straight into his left eye and the other one straight into his right eye. That's some serious badass shooting, Laurie. Michael starts swatting his scalpel around the room, unable to see Laurie after being shot oh so perfectly in the eyes, Loomis, back up after being stabbed, starts loosening the canisters of ether, with Laurie helping him with the other canisters. Loomis then tells Laurie to leave the room, to which she does, and then we get this epic dialogue from Loomis.
It is time, Michael.
Holy shit! He just blew that whole wing of the hospital, including himself, right up into the flames. Loomis sacrificing himself to kill Michael as Michael walks from the flames, lit ablaze, and then eventually falls to the ground. I won't be adding Michael or Loomis to the body count, as they are both to be confirmed to have survived this blast, which, if you ask me, seems near impossible to survive, but it was revealed in Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers, of their survival. We then see it is morning, and there are a ton of police officers, news reporters, and paramedics at the scene with Laurie in the back of the ambulance. Fun fact, for those that don't know this, but in the television version of the film, someone unidentified sits up in the ambulance with Laurie covered by a white sheet, to which when the white sheet falls off, it is revealed to be Jimmy with a bandage on his head, and he was confirmed to be a survivor of this massacre. Mr. Sandman, sung by the Quartettes, is played in the first of many films to use this song in the franchise. Not sure why they were obsessed with this song so much, but anyways, the ambulance with Laurie inside drives off as visions of Michael's burning body is shown. This film was supposed to be the official demise of Michael Myers, and next week, when we cover Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, you'll see the direction that John Carpenter wanted to take this franchise and exactly why it wasn't the last that we saw of Michael. But before we go to Evil Irishman, we still have some Evil Michael to get to. So how many bodies did Michael Myers rack up in the sequel? Let's go and count the bodies, what, don't you say? Halloween 2 was released on October 30th, 1981, and it starred Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, Lance Guest, Pamela Susan Shoop, Tawny Moyer, Gloria Gifford, Leo Rossi, and Hunter Von Leer. There were a total of 10 deaths in Halloween 2, with 5 of them being females and 5 of them being males, for a 50-50 split between genders, giving us a half strawberry and a half blueberry pie. The Slasher Scotty gold ribbon for coolest kill would have to be given to Ben Tramer. It was a toss-up between Ben Tramer and Nurse Karen, but Ben takes the cake with the way he was hit and then set on fire, and it was all Dr. Loomis's fault. The Slasher Scotty silver medal for lamest kill would have to be given to Dr. Mixter because, well, he was just shown with a syringe in his eye, which unfortunately wasn't even shown on screen. It was just a reveal. Make sure to subscribe to Slasher Scotty for more videos to come with interviews and the body count, and don't forget to smash that like button if you liked what you just watched. Now until next time, I'm Slasher Scotty, and this has been the body count. Be good people.